Very much. I'm Jeannie Birch, co-director of the Penn Institute for Urban Research, and Susan Wachter is also co-director. Susan?
Thank you, Jeannie, and thank you all for being with us, and welcome to the 20th Annual Penn Institute of Urban Research Leadership Forum and presentation of the Lawrence C. Nussdorf Urban Leadership Prize. It is my great honor to welcome President Larry Jameson to convene us this morning. President Jameson was named president of the University of Pennsylvania in March 2025. But President Jameson has been with us before that. He served as interim president since December 2023, and previously served as executive vice president of the University of Pennsylvania for the health system and the dean of the Perelman School of Medicine since 2011. It is a personal honor and a great honor to Penn IUR to welcome Larry Jameson. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's terrific to see all of you here. It's a wonderful day in Philadelphia. It's a wonderful day to be celebrating IUR and its 20th anniversary. And for all of the runners who are participating in the Penn Relays, it's a perfect day for that. I've got my Penn Relays tie on. As you can imagine, I may have the world's largest collection of Penn ties. All different kinds. So Professor Birch and Professor Wachter, thank you so much for the kind introduction and for including me. Your longstanding leadership at Penn has pioneered urban research. And by the way, congratulations again for winning the Drawdown the Lightning Prize that we celebrated a couple of days ago. Your project was entitled Penn as an Anchor Institution, and we look forward to seeing that unfold. So I also want to congratulate the recipients of this year's prize, and I'm so happy that some of the former recipients could come back. These prizes named after Larry Nussdorf, and I'm so happy that his family could be here with us. Melanie, I saw you earlier. This is a very special set of prizes, and over 20 years, we've recognized a lot of people, and for 20 more years, we'll recognize even more. So what this institute has accomplished in its first 2 decades is not only striking, but impactful. IUR has engaged partners from Guangzhou, China, to Kocaeli, Turkey, and beyond. There have been influential roundtables. Of course, we have published groundbreaking research, not only in basic areas, but also in policy. And IUR remains close to home here in Philadelphia. It embodies Penn's essential mission of being a global citizen, but also a Philadelphia anchor and neighbor. 20 years in, we're continuing to shed light on how and why cities can do good. IUR does that by bringing together the field's most foremost thinkers and doers. This leads me to this year's Lawrence C. Nussdorf Urban Leadership Prize. For the past 2 decades, Penn IUR has recognized path-breaking leaders in urban affairs. They've all been deeply involved in the world's urban environments, from mural arts and policy development to nonprofit leadership and government. Being a good neighbor is an active choice. In cities, it's the effort to build connections and improve the lives of others. In research, it's the pursuit of knowledge that informs policy, fosters equitable and sustainable communities. Today's honorees take great pride in their interdisciplinary nature. They are engineers, mayors, leaders, and innovators. They're students engaging with the leading challenges of our time. Today's award winners share Penn's conviction that forging novel connections has the potential to advance knowledge and improve lives. We know firsthand that these connections are critical, not only for academic excellence, but for employing practical solutions, no matter the challenge. So warm congratulations to this year's Lawrence C. Nussdorf Urban Leadership Prize winners. I'm going to list them and then they'll get the formal recognition. So these include Yvonne Aki-Sawyerr, Patrick Harker, Enrique Peñalosa, and the winners of the student awards are Nikita Barati, Griffin Pitt, and Skyla Rempel. Thank you all for what you've done. Thank you what you're going to do, and thank you for your commitment to innovative urban policy.
Thank you. Can you stay? We'll call them up and we'll take a photo. Prize winners, please come up. Yes. And now we'll actually give the awards. So Nikita Barati, please come. Skyla Rempel. Griffin had a problem with classes, so I'm not sure she's here yet. Guess not. We'll get that to her later. All right. Yvonne Aki-Sawyerr. Patrick Harker. Last but not least, Enrique Peñalosa. And each of them now will come and say a few words. Yvonne, would you like to come?
Good morning, everyone. I think I should start off by saying a huge thank you to the Institute for this award. Truly appreciate the recognition. And I was told that the consideration for this particular award was the work that I've done looking at the improvement of property rates, revenue, taxes. You know, you're getting an award for raising taxes. I'm sure there are many people who don't think that's a worthy cause. But when you're running a city, having the revenue to ensure that that city's growth is sustainable is very important. And as I sat here today thinking through the number of mayors, and I see my dear friend Mike Nutter in the room, former Philadelphia mayor, I know that our cities are so different. From cities in the global south to cities in the north, cities even within the United States of America are incredibly different. But for many of you sitting here, you would find it hard to understand what urban development means in a city like mine. I'm the mayor of the capital city of Sierra Leone, the mayor of Freetown, a city with a population of 1.5 million people that has exploded in the last 30 years, from 500,000 to 1.5 million. That growth has happened within the context of no urban planning and no building permitting regime. functions which have been removed from the city government and handed over to the central government. So if it's in the hands of the central government, then you know it doesn't happen. And when it doesn't happen and the city continues to grow in population, what you end up with is a sprawl. You end up with a lack of productivity. All the things that we know cities can give in terms of benefits are lost because of the lack of planning. So in 2017, having never been involved in politics in my life, but very concerned about the environmental degradation that was being caused by this population growth, I ran for office. And in running for office, I came at it like a true urban planner, even though I'd never done planning before, with a plan. The plan was called #Transform Freetown. It had 4 clusters, 11 priority sectors, and at the heart of that growth was a property rate system. So we moved from having a manual book as the property rate database to a digitized system where every single property in the city was captured through a satellite image. Rooftop measurements were taken, ground truthing was done. We moved from 37,000 properties to 120,000 properties. Of course, there was resistance because many people in the city had never paid taxes before because they weren't captured. Now everyone is captured, or almost everyone. The system, 4 years later, 5 years later, has not only been awarded and recognized in The Economist, but is now being rolled out throughout the country into the other cities with the support of the World Bank. That sort of leadership is central to making the changes that we want to see in our cities. There will always be resistance to the things that make our cities better. But the job of us as mayors, mayors old and new, is to continue to stand strong in the face of that resistance to bring development to our residents. And I'll close by saying this. I move forward into the political space because of my concern for the environment. That concern is really encapsulated in the fight against climate change, which is truly, truly impacting cities such as my own. That growth that I talked about has been driven initially by a civil war, and then more recently, because climate change means that the unpredictable weather patterns are causing many of our rural subsistence farmers to lose their livelihoods. And in losing their livelihoods, they make their way to the city. So climate change has direct and indirect impacts. And I'm very, very proud to also serve as the co-chair of C40 Cities, a collection of almost 100 cities who are standing in the face of a lot of opposition currently to fight against climate change. So this morning, I am honored and privileged to have had this recognition and continue. I re-ran for office in 2023. I was elected with a 66% majority. Thank you. And have continued the journey of transformation. It is now, our development agenda is now Transform Freetown, Transforming Lives, as we put at the heart of that plan how we can create 120,000 decent jobs for women and youth within 4 clusters: climate action, digital economy, heritage tourism, and human capital development. So, Jeannie, thank you to you all. I very much appreciate the honor. And this is what keeps us going as we stand to make a difference in the lives of others. And as Jeannie said, taking this now to the national level as I run for president of Sierra Leone. Thank you.
Well, we all wish we could vote in Sierra Leone because we know that you certainly would win all of our votes. And please read the descriptions in the program. I'm not reading them so that you can read them, but among other things, Yvonne created the first wastewater plant, has planted over 1 million trees in her city, in a city that has 30 or 40% of the people living in informal settlements. So it's a major thing. And just yesterday, she said her deputy mayor called and said they had a flood and had to deal with that. So you can imagine what it is carrying on these things. So our next speaker, of course, is our own Patrick Harker.
Well, good morning. Good morning. Now, this is a double honor for me. Obviously, the award is a real gift, and I really thank you for it. But also the namesake of the award, the person behind the award, is somebody I deeply, deeply admired, Larry Nussdorf. I worked very closely with him throughout the years, both here at Penn and in another life on a corporate board. And I just admire his passion, what he accomplished in his life, how much he cared. So this really means a lot to me. Congratulations on the Institute. 20 years. I mean, I was here on campus, saw the work that was happening, now have seen it from afar for the past 18 years. You keep going, and it's really a real gift, not just to this university and the city, but globally. Now, I understand that I might not be the natural fit as the president of the Federal Reserve Bank, the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia, to be standing here accepting an award on urban leadership. I mean, if you read the news, all we do is interest rates, right? That's it. You watch CNBC, that's all we do is interest rates. But the Philadelphia Fed isn't just interest rates. It isn't just some building down on Arch Street. It's very, very much part of the fabric of this city and this region. And we strive to make it so. We are partners. We really believe in this partnership model of government officials, business, industry leaders, community-based nonprofits, and institutions of higher education in the broad work we have of moving us forward as a city and as a region. We have many cities in my region, my 3rd district, who are struggling. You go around, you see these towns who are trying to figure out what their future is. And I've been very proud of the work that we've undertaken because we don't just do research and put it on a shelf. I have teams that go out, work with these communities to help them with the research we have to figure out how they can solve their problem. And, you know, this is amazing work. For example, recently, the main community development prize that's given at the Fed is called the Janet Yellen Award. Our team won it this year for what we're calling ROC cohorts, reinventing our community cohorts, training communities, not just here in the 3rd district, but around the country, run a toolkit that they could use to move their communities forward. And I see that as my mission. And I've seen that over 10 years as my mission at the Fed, to get out into the community, to see how we can move the needle. Because ultimately, what the Fed is about is our dual mandate. We always have to come back to what Congress told us to do. Stabilize prices, working on that, a little challenging right now, and maximum employment. What does maximum employment mean? Well, there's a technical term, a technical definition in economics, but to me it means something very simple. If you want a good job, you can find it, and if I want a good employee with the right skills, I can find them. To do that, there's a lot of things that have to happen to make that happen. We just did a study that just got released. We just had a great summit, an economic mobility summit for 2 days downtown here. We had people from all around the country come. It was sold out, over 500 people, speakers from around the country talking about how to move the needle on economic mobility in community after community in the country. And as part of that, we released a report that outlined what we were hearing from people and what was holding them back. Often the skill gap part of it, but it's transportation, housing, it's childcare, quality of life issues, all these things. If I can't get to a job, or the job can't come to me because I don't have broadband access, I don't have a job, and you don't have the employee. That's why we do this work. If we want the economy to grow and prosper, we need to understand those fundamental limits that we have, that those barriers to employment that need to be overcome. Not that we're going to solve those. That's not the job of the Fed. But through our research, we can highlight, through our convening, we can discuss it and bring those solutions to bear. Closer to home, we've conducted over the last several years a research initiative, data-driven. We are data. We love data. A data-driven research initiative called the Anchor Economy Initiative, where we've collected data on 524 regions across the U.S. on the economic impact of the eds and meds in those regions. This city, for example, we have a score, a reliance index. This city is a 1.4. That is 40% more reliant on eds and meds than the country as a whole. The region's a 1.28. still these institutions matter. They matter to us, and we need to keep them strong. And Mr. President, I just applaud you and the work that everybody's doing here to make sure that this institution remains strong as the key anchor in this city and in this region. So, I could go on. There's a lot of work we do at the Fed that's not interest rates. But what stood out to me is the connection that we have with IUR over many years, and Jeannie and Susan. And, that connection with the academic world, with this team here in particular, has really been the fuel that's helped us do what we do. So again, I just appreciate the connections we've had over the years. To my fellow honorees, I'm just awed by what you've done. And I just am proud to be part of the company with you. And to the students, one of the things I said at this summit the other day was we were talking about the economy, and I was talking with the head of the Urban Institute. We had a fireside chat about the economy. And I said something the media picked up on a lot. I don't understand quite why, but I said, without hope, the economy doesn't grow. If people lose hope, you've lost everything. You can have the best economic policy plan, the best this plan, the best that plan, but without hope, nothing else will work. You are that hope. You're the ones that are bringing that hope, that energy to this field. And I just congratulate you, and I just ask you, keep going. We need that hope. Thank you.
Pat Harker is ever the teacher. Thank you very much for that. And thank you for recognizing the importance of anchor institutions through the Fed, which is really, really important to all of our economy. Last but not least, Enrique Peñalosa, please.
Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you, President Jameson. It's an honor to be here. Thank you, Susan. I don't know how I will end up thanking Jeannie and Susan. They published my book here. Of course, this made me be able to be much more useful in life and made me very happy. And I'm very thankful. And now this, so I am so thankful. And I am very honored to be here with Professor Dr. Harker and with my friend Yvonne, whom I knew curiously enough, even though she is from a region far, we have been working together for a while. Also to be here with former mayors and awardees. And in fact, in short, I am very happy and very thankful to be here. And I have not enough words to thank. Now, I want to mention very quickly the thing that moved me as mayor. I was mayor in 2 occasions, non-consecutive. I have always been obsessed with equality and the equality that cities can construct. I like to say, imagine one of the poorest areas in the city of Bogotá, totally sprung from informal developments. Now it has water, sewage, piped gas, wonderful, fantastic schools, as good as any school you could find in Philadelphia or the best private schools in Bogotá. They have nurseries, children nurseries. The people there can take a cable car down to take one of the best bus-based mass transit in the world, heavily subsidized. They go across the street and go to a fantastic 70-hectare park, to our sports and cultural center with Olympic swimming pools, with auditoriums. They go across the park, which has all kinds of sports infrastructure, and go to a marvelous large library. Now, none of this is taken into consideration to measure the Gini inequality coefficient. Nothing of this is measured. And so we are have one of the worst income distributions in the planet and all of this. So I think, I'm sure there are ways, and Dr. Susan has, I'm sure, has studied many ways to measure these things, but they are not important enough. And I think many times it's easier and perhaps even more fruitful to construct equality distributing public goods and not private goods, because Gini measures private goods, but not really public goods. And so there are so many other things that we could, so I think equality is important. Despite the fact that we all have adopted market economy, and market economy needs some kind of inequality. But I believe cities can be very powerful constructing a different kind of equality. And I mentioned three very quickly. One is equality of public space, which seems minor thing, but that rich and poor meet as equals in public space. Rich and poor always meet. The owner of the apartment with the doorman in the building. But the interesting thing is they meet in the public transport, in the sidewalk, or in the park, because they meet in a totally different way. Second, I think cities can provide equality of quality of life, that regardless of income, people should be able to have access to sports facilities or music lessons and so on, beyond the obvious health and education opportunities. And third, there is a very powerful equality, which I call democratic equality, and is that if all citizens are equal, then public good prevails over private interest. And there are many powerful consequences. For example, if all citizens are equal, somebody on a $50 bicycle has a right to as much road space as somebody in a Rolls Royce or in a new Mercedes. Or a bus with 200 passengers has a right to 200 times more road space than a car with one. And if public good prevails over private interest, we should never have private waterfronts, for example, like in those in Long Island Sound, not just in developing cities. And so there are many issues. So I believe my thesis is that a goal, a criteria to judge whether urban policies are good is whether they construct equality. And also, unfortunately, one of the biggest obstacles to making good cities is inequality. Is many times, many of the biggest obstacles we face as mayors when we are trying to make a better city is inequality. I don't have time to go into this, but so we have fought in many ways for these things. There's two kinds of equality construction that I would say. One is the one you achieve without much conflict, making wonderful hospitals or parks or schools or housing projects. Well, but then many other require conflict. For example, we use eminent domain to turn the polo fields and the riding facilities of the most exclusive country club in Colombia into a public park. Or when you take space away from cars to give it to public transport or bicycles. So there is huge conflicts. I mean, I used to have my hair black in some time in the past. So, but this is important. And just to mention too, before I finish, is that things that I think is important for us and for Africa is, I believe, the private property and the market does not work in the case of land around growing cities. We have slums all over the developing world cities, and we had slums even in the advanced world cities. Why? There is only one reason, because the low-income people don't have access to legal land. It's the only reason for it. And in this case, the market doesn't work because the beauty of the market is that as prices go up, supply increases, and then prices come down. In the case of land around growing cities, you can increase the price all you want, and the supply of land that is accessible to public transport, to education, to health does not increase. So, of course, in theory, there are many tax means to sophisticated schemes such as they are used in Europe and to solve this, but in developing countries, it doesn't work. So in my case, we, for example, we legalized hundreds of informal neighborhoods, and we intervene land to do housing for about 500,000 people, about 70% low income. And another last example is the BRT example. which I think is interesting, we created a BRT system, which is now moving, it has only 114 kilometers, it's been increased by 60%, but at this time it moves 2.6 million passengers daily. And again, the essence is a very simple principle, that if all citizens are equal, then a bus has a right to more road space. So these are things that are interesting. Thanks to Penn, I am able to promote these things in some other cities in Africa and other places. And I am so thankful for this award and very honored to be here.
Thank you very much. And in case you don't know, a BRT is a bus rapid transit system.
So we have heard from 3 transformative leaders, and they're all very modest, but they are transforming the potential of urban development globally. We have 2 billion more people to come in the next 20, 30 years and come to cities with public services, with safe to drink water, without floods, with education. It's leaders such as these who will bring urban development for the people. So once again, we thank you.
Our last prize winner arrived from class, and so we'd like to give her her award. Please, Griffin.
Come on up. And while you're coming up to receive your award, we are also going to convene next a panel of.
I lost it.
Oh, well. We are going to ask the next panel to come to begin to.
We'll just shake hands.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this is wonderful. So our next panel is exemplars of illustrious leaders that we've had the honor to honor in the past. We've learned from them, and we will continue to learn from our award winners today and these previous award winners, and we'll learn from them right now. So please, panelists, come on up. And we don't have, okay, well, well, in case you don't know that you're on this panel. So we have with us Henry Cisneros, who is former mayor, former secretary of Department of Housing and Urban Development, just actually before I came. And please come join us. And Manny Diaz, Mayor of Miami and book author for us. And Renee Glover, who is CEO of Atlanta Housing Authority. Patrick Harker is joining us, please, once again. Paul Levy, Executive Director of the Center City District. Mark Moriel, President of National Urban League. Michael Nutter, former mayor, City of Philadelphia, and also one of our authors. And unfortunately, Egbert Perry is ill and cannot join us. I need this one. These mayors and other leaders, including Renee and Paul and Patrick, who, you know, these are the only ones who haven't been mayors, but they should have been. But I also want to briefly say, Pat was very modest, because of Philadelphia. Good, no, it's great. What they learned as an urban leader. So we're going to ask each panelist what they learned as an urban leader and what they want to share with us about what needs to be done in the future. And to start us off, there could be no one better than my friend, Philadelphia Mayor Nutter. Please, Mayor Nutter. Okay.
Susan and Jeannie, good morning, everyone. Excited to be here. I think one of the big things I learned is that I clearly was not as smart as I thought I was. Because if I actually had any sense, maybe I would not have been mayor. No, no, it is the best job in politics. There's a little book in the back there that claims that mayor is the best job in politics. Thinking about this morning's question, and
It's a book.
it is a book.
Which you
Yeah,
can buy.
produced by Penn Press. Yes, not a plug. um, this kind of, you saw the disruption that we just created, and it's what, but it's what we do. It is about leadership. I think it's certainly one part in an appropriate way, little one part ego, two parts humility. Each of us had the audacity to think that in 1.5 million person city, 800,000 million, right, millions of people, we thought that we were the best person, mayor, to run that place. And so you have to have a little bit of that. The humility part comes in trying to get stuff done, right? We don't have Dilworth Park, but for Paul Levy and his leadership, and working then with the Obama administration, and the administrations kind of come and go. You have to get stuff done. There's not one person in the city who is wondering really on a daily basis what the federal government is doing. What they're concerned about is, did you pick up my trash? Are there abandoned cars on my street? Is a house falling down? Is my child going to be safe? Every day we are in your life in a variety of ways that people don't even think about and take for granted. That requires leadership and humility and a get stuff done kind of attitude. That's the biggest thing I learned. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor, for all that you've done. And now we turn to Renee Glover. Renee and I go way back, and Renee has helped solve some of the most difficult issues in America, which is housing, for affordable housing for people who otherwise could not afford it, through your work.
Well, thank you so much. I am thrilled to be here. And Jeannie and Susan, you rock. That's all I got to say. And this is such an incredibly important campus, university. The IUR is just so important because it's telling the stories that provide the way forward. Because oftentimes you look at problems and you say, gee, these things are unsolvable. So I think the thing that I've learned from the work that I've done is to never stop believing in the universally talented group of people and human beings that we serve. If you lose sight of the people, you're completely lost. I mean, you know, you can build beautiful buildings, you can build fabulous infrastructure, but if the people are not better at the end of the day, you failed. And I've also learned that the human capacity is really endless. And so the only thing that we have to continue to do is to help remove the barriers. Because if we don't do that in our work and we don't get that accomplished, again, we fail, because that's what makes the difference. And the power of mayors and other leaders is always keeping your eye on that. And that means meeting people where they are. And just because someone may be at the bottom of the income spectrum has nothing to do with their God-given human potential. And so you got to stay with it, and you got to eliminate barriers, and in a creative way, without taking away from the dignity of the people. And the only reason that something doesn't get solved is we lose sight of universal humanity. And the other lesson is we've got to communicate more effectively, because sometimes, we're using acronyms and all this stuff that I promise you nobody cares anything about except you or the other people that are in, your circle. It's the stories that have the power. And the way you develop stories is that you get to know the people that you're impacting and seeing their story and living their story. That's the lasting legacy. And yeah, you got to perform. So I'm not sitting here telling you that, it's all about those soft things, because yeah, you got to get up, make it happen, have the impact. It's got to be validated by independent resources and that type of thing. But at the end of the day, the legacy, the impact are the people who are the future leaders and making a difference. So if you don't lose sight of that and you keep them top of mind, we can solve anything that we choose to do. And you got to love the people. You got to know the people. You got to love the people, even when they are beating the heck out of you.
Which happens to some of our mayors, but they know very well. But Renee Glover, we will always learn from you about bringing hope and opportunity to people. And we now turn to Mayor Manny Diaz, who actually, believe it or not, Miami wasn't always the extraordinary city it is today. In fact, before Mayor Manny Diaz, it was a city in decline, and not only in decline using numerics, in decline for people. Very sadly in decline for the people of Miami. And we know from his work how we can transform cities, because he wrote the book, Transforming Miami. Manny.
Thank you, Susan. I'm really honored to be here. Two questions, and I'll go real quick through this so the others can have a chance. But first of all, I'm also honored to be here with three of my former colleagues. One of the things you'll learn about being mayor is that we are the greatest plagiarists in the world, and we say that with pride, because we look at what all of us did and have done, and say, "Hey, I love that." And I'm going to do that in my city. Why not? It works, right? And of course, Mayor Peñalosa as well. So what is a lesson? Well, I'll keep it very simple. It's an old cliche, but all politics are local. And that's who we are. We are the political unit that is closest to the people. And if you look at all the surveys, we are the most trusted of all those political units. And the good news is mayors obviously and get that. And notwithstanding all the messes that are created in our beltway in DC and the messes that are created by our state capitals, why is it that cities and metro areas in the United States account for 90% of U.S. economic growth, jobs, income, and gross development, GDP? Why? Because we get it. We know what we have to do. So, and part of that, by the way, is learning how to do more with less, having a can-do, get things done attitude, notwithstanding potential lack of resources or anything else. We know we have to get a job done because, like somebody said, we go to the grocery store, we go to pump gas. Oh, I have an electric car, by the way. And somebody's yelling at us, right? Because we didn't pick up their garbage or something. And so we don't have a choice. And then as far as advice for the future, and by the way, I hope some of you, I know we have a future president up here. I hope we have some future, I hope we have some future mayors with us as well. But what's the advice for the future? Do your job. I mean, it really is that simple. Live up to the promise of the ancients, which was to leave a city better than the one that you inherited. That's not hard to do. Create a climate of hope, opportunity, and a better life for the people you serve. Control your future and control your destiny. Do not sit around and depend on DC or your state capital to bail you out. It's your job. Build a sense of community, reconnect, help reconnect neighbors. Focus on local kitchen table issues, everyday struggles that working class Americans are going through in your city. Put yourself in their shoes. Feel their pain. Someone talked earlier today about people being left behind and losing hope. That's exactly correct. There are a lot of people in our cities who feel like this is not their country, this is not their city, and they feel like they've lost. It's our job to keep the American dream alive. Avoid partisanship. There isn't a mayor on this panel or sitting out there who was approached by a constituent for a problem and said, let me see your voter registration card first. We take care of everybody. It doesn't matter what party they're from. Okay, here's one that you mentioned. Stop communicating with your people virtually. For God's sakes, get off your butt, go into your community and talk to people, hear them, listen to them, and speak in a language that they can understand. Not, what did you call it, algorithms, acronyms or whatever, you know, come on. And always have heart, passion, vision, compassion, dignity, honesty, and teamwork. And be welcoming. I was mayor of a city where 60% of our residents are foreign born. Bunch of immigrants. We did it, we've done a pretty good job, we were given. And finally, never forget why. Why? Why you chose to do this in the first place. Because people matter, and because we're all in it together.
Thank you, Mayor. We are all in it together. And we will hear from another mayor who made things better than when they came, Mayor Cisneros from San Antonio, and also of HUD. It was my honor to serve with President Clinton as you did. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. My heart is very full this morning to be in this place with people who believe the same things about the role of our cities in the nation, to be with those who were honored this morning, and to be with former colleagues and people who have served together in government, trying to make our country better. In terms of fundamental insights from my standpoint, I entered the office with an objective. And the insight, I think, is that it can be made to work. And that was that a city can be a master of its own destiny. It doesn't have to just ride the currents of economic shifts and economic problems, but can set out on a course and actually produce it if we're able to bring everyone together and agree on the fundamental direction of what we're trying to do. In our case, the issue was we were one of the poorest cities in the country, and many people were marginalized. Others were doing very well. So the trick was to spur the economic development of the city, doing all the traditional things that are necessary to do: water and power and roads, and working with the traditional economic development specialists to bring jobs, but then to make sure that the underlying purpose of that was to create incomes and wages and opportunity and training for those who had been marginalized. It may not be the perfect philosophy of how to proceed, but in the modern American setting, it is the practical way to proceed, because you're not going to, upset the complete apple cart of business. We have to understand what it takes for business to grow and make it work for the rest of the community. So the equity agenda that Mayor Peñalosa spoke earlier is really the essence of it. I used to say, I have to deal with the developers and the business people and work with them on the things they're attempting to do, but I have a different purpose than they do. They want to make money, they want to create intergenerational wealth, whatever it is, but my purpose is create jobs, create incomes, and really make them work. So I would say that that strategy has worked very well for our city. It's now the 7th largest city in the country. The differences that once existed ethnically between Latinos and Anglo-Texans and African-Americans and many others almost don't exist. There's such a seamless governance and seamless access to power, et cetera. But we still have a long way to go because, again, as Mayor Peñalosa said, you can work on the things that relate to public decision-making, but it's very, very, very hard to get the private sector to do these things. The reality is that in these times, with the withdrawal of federal assistance, with the economy functioning as it is, with the generations now of offshoring and contracting out and everything else, no matter what you do on the public side, you lose ground because the larger macroeconomic factors are working against you. So unless we're able to find ways to deal with some of those questions, let me just say in closing, one, we have found some ways to extend the largesse of opportunity to people who've been locked out. We do public things like a pre-K program that's got 4 campuses of, look like community colleges, but they're for 4-year-olds. And things like a Ready to Work program where we raised $154 million during the pandemic. Things like a what we call Supply SA, to get all of the public agencies to change their fundamental procurement system so small and local businesses can participate. We did those things, but that still is not enough. And we need in our country, I think the next big challenge for our cities is to find the way to make the larger economy work for people who are locked out. And I would just close by saying, if we don't, then our cities are going to be concentrations of the poor in unequal settings, and the country won't work. The country itself won't work. So the fundamental challenge before us is, in a time when the mindset is in the opposite direction on equality, we see that out of Washington, right? Cities have to be the platforms from which some measure of equality is created. And that means doing, I'm not talking anything radical or socialist or anything of that nature. We just have to make the system that we speak about work for people. That's my take.
Thank you for your comments and for all you have done for us in that way. Thank you. Now it's our pleasure to turn to Mark Moriello, who's president and CEO of National Urban League and former mayor of New Orleans, and from whom I personally learn about equality every time he speaks. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here. Susan and Jeannie, thank you for inviting me. I'm also a proud 1980 graduate of this institution, the University of Pennsylvania. And Michael Nutter and I were here together. So Penn has produced 2 mayors from our class, roughly. And that's really a testament. Also, parent, my son Mason finished here last May, so I'm done with paying tuition here. And it's an honor to be with Michael and Manny and Henry, 3 giants. Both Michael, Manny, and I all served as presidents of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and Henry served as president of the National League of Cities. So each of us also had the opportunity to serve as a leader of mayors. It's like being the majority leader of the mayors in the time that you serve in that position. Let me say this about being mayor. I want to tell you a very quick story. Governor of Louisiana back in the 90s went on a job hunting trip to Japan. And in a room of business people, stood up and introduced himself and said, "I'm the governor of Louisiana." To which there was polite applause and befuddlement. Then he said, "I am from New Orleans." And the entire room stood up. It is our cities that define America. People all over the world know New York, San Francisco, San Antonio, Philadelphia, Miami. They may even know Peoria better than they know Illinois or Pennsylvania or Florida or Texas. Our cities define America. And as mayors, we're the chief executive officers of those cities. The mayor, the chief cook, and bottle washer. The mayor has to be able to run, jump, dance, hopscotch, break dance, square dance, and ball all in the same day without practice, sometimes a preparation. And that's the essence of mayoral leadership today and all over the world. The variety of it's a job that's not easily defined because you're the drum major, you're the parish priest, the imam, you're the rabbi, you're the pastor that has to deliver us today. You have to do all of these things. If there was an important lesson that I learned, and there are two. One, the value proposition of planning, but the ability to plan and not make the plan the outcome, to make the plan a step and the the outcome. You can get caught in the planning phase, or you can seek to move too quickly to action without planning. The two have to go hand in hand. The second lesson is you are only as good as your people. And for all of us, it's one, the people that serve with us in government, but it's also the civic-minded community leaders who you can align with and ally with, because they both have their own interests, but they have the city's interests at heart. And you're only as good as they are. And your ability to recruit them and organize them, inspire them, listen to them, argue with them, go back and forth with them. You're only as good as they are. And cultivating and energizing and motivating and listening and hearing and talking to them is what indeed makes you great. Michael Jordan would not have won all those championships without Scottie Pippen. Bruce Springsteen would be nothing without the E Street Band. I mean, no great leader is great without the support cast, without the team around them. And that's a leader lesson, but so important for being mayors of major American cities. Final thing I'll say, in this moment, it always pains me that this nation will not embrace the notion that investing in American cities will always drive the American economy. Manny said it right. It's the metro areas that produce the jobs. Why do we vilify American cities? Why do we create a political divide between the city? The residents of the city are dependent on rural America for the production of food. The residents of rural America are dependent on the city for the production of goods and services. Why do we have the divide is not sane and it's not realistic? We've got to recognize, and I think we can all champion this, the interdependence of the city and its suburb, the city, its suburbs, and rural America, if we are going to be able to move forthright and move forward, I think, in 21st century America. I think it's a crucial thing to understand. And I think that we who are champions of cities have to always say that we champion the city, but the city is an interdependent component of our nation. And so to invest in the city is not to just make things in the city better, but it's to make things all across the nation better. So glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for championing the city and for the city's role in the nation. And now we turn to Paul Levy, who is our Philadelphia on-the-ground change maker for Center City, Philadelphia, Center City District. Really brought a whole new life to the city in the center and therefore to the metropolitan area as well. Paul, how did you do it? What are your lessons?
Great. Well, thank you. And it's really great to be here. Now you're moving over to the non-elected side of the platform here. I wrote down two things this morning when I was thinking about what I wanted to say. And number one was knowing when to stay and knowing when to go. And I'll talk about that. And the second one is knowing when past experience is wisdom and when is it just looking in the rearview mirror. All right. So on that first point, I started out in this city in 1976 doing community organizing, working with neighborhood groups, and jumping up and down and telling city government what it should do. And I did that for 4 years and then said, maybe it's time to get in on the inside and see what I could do. I worked for this city when Bill Green was mayor in the Office of Housing and Community Development. It was an incredibly learning, informative experience, but I lived through the Reagan budget cuts, so that we had a whole lot less money. And I realized at some point it was time to go because I really needed to learn about real estate development. And I thought I would teach myself that at University of Pennsylvania's expense. So I came here and ran the development division, built a series of buildings around here, but really learned how development occurred. And then I got the opportunity that Susan alluded to in 1990 to really create the Center City District. And that's a business improvement district that really operated, grew from a $6.5 million organization today to a $34 million organization. And as I think Michael Nutter said, there's things you need to do every day. We were about clean and safe and green. But longevity and staying in a position enabled us to do projects like Dilworth Park. We started the first vision for that in 2003. We didn't open it until 2014. The time it took, the planning, the building, the funding source, and I want to thank Mayor Nutter for the $5 million contribution the city put into that $65 million project. But longevity, staying in a position sometimes is better. You learn a lot when you change positions. You get different perspectives, but staying in a position sometimes while you're doing the day-to-day stuff. It took us 2 to 3 years to build the first phase of the rail park. I started on the second phase in 2019. We still haven't broken ground yet. We lost a little bit of federal money in the last year for reasons some of you may understand, but staying in a place has real benefits, but knowing when to change, I think, is a real key takeaway. I think knowing when past experience is wisdom and when is it just looking in the rearview mirror. As we are living through what we're living through now, I've got 2 daughters asking me this. I teach here at Penn. I have students asking, has this city, has this country, excuse me, always been this crazy, right? Is this really an unusual moment? And I try to remind myself and them that this is a city that fought a civil war to end slavery. This is a city that, excuse me, a country. This is a country that lived through incredible anti-immigrant sentiment and completely shut its borders after World War I. This is a country that lived through the McCarthy era, the most openness of thinking. This is a country that lived through Richard Nixon, right? So we have been through terrible times, and there are incredible strengths to remember. At the same time, when you get hair my color, you sometimes wonder, am I just looking in the rearview mirror? And understanding, I think this post-COVID period is a transformational moment. I think there are people trying to lease office space. There are people trying to lease retail space who may be looking in the rearview mirror to know that the world that we built from 2000 to 2020 has profoundly changed, and we need to rethink land use. We need to think how our cities work. We need to rethink our transportation system. So for me, again, there are huge advantages if you're not in an elected role of changing your job multiple times to see it from different perspectives. There's huge advantages of staying in place a long time. For me, it was 33 years. You can get an awful lot done during that period of time. And then that second piece of wisdom, which is when is it wisdom and when are you just out of date, and knowing how to interpret the two of those. Thank you.
Thank you for all, and you did get a lot done. And now we will hear from a former leader at Penn and now a regional leader. Please give us a final comments from yourself and on behalf of the Penn.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you again, Susan. There's so much I agree with. Pretty much I agree with everything. But I want to bring up 2 issues that nobody's touched on. And let me start with a little story. So when I soon got to the Fed, we realized that we had many struggling communities throughout our district. These were old and manufacturing cities in some cases, some still manufacturing cities, and others who were just struggling, and including our anchor city, Philadelphia. So we initiated a program called the Economic Growth and Mobility Project, or we call it EGMP. And EGMP's focus is there's a 3-legged stool that we try to build through our research and convening. One is getting good jobs, not jobs. And this is one of the focus. Echo what happened earlier this week in our economic mobility conference. Many people echoed the same sentiment. It's not just about jobs, counting heads. It's about good jobs. So getting and attracting and building good jobs. Second, of course, is having the people that can fill those jobs, right, with the skills. And third are overcoming all these infrastructure issues, significant infrastructure issues that I touched upon earlier. Housing, transportation, broadband, childcare, healthcare, I mean, these are the things that hold people back from taking a job because they have other things in their life that affect them beyond just going 9 to 5 to work. So we initiated this project and we created what we call research and action labs. And these were labs where we would do a deep dive with the community on an issue that we thought was a generic issue that we could take to other cities around the country. The first one we did was in Northeast Pennsylvania, Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, Hazleton area. This is an area that has still a fairly large, relatively speaking, manufacturing base in the Scranton area, but they've got challenges. It's become a major logistics hub for New Jersey and New York City. But the people, the lower income, moderate income people living in the cities had no access to transportation to get to those jobs that are out on the highways. These are truck repair jobs. And, you know, a good diesel mechanic makes over $100,000 a year. So again, we're talking about good jobs. They're not all just warehouse jobs. These can be really good jobs for people. So we put together a group. We had a little national conference on what we call equitable transit. We pulled people together, some national leaders, and they themselves started to pull together. And it was the nonprofits, a couple major nonprofits, but importantly, the business community stepped up in a major way and said, we have a problem we need to solve, and you can help us solve it. And the transit agencies. There are 3 transit agencies in that region that didn't coordinate at all. No, it was impossible to go from downtown Scranton out to a job at Amazon on 3rd shift if you didn't have a car. It's just not possible. So they created an organization called NEPA Moves, and they are solving that problem. They've now gone further and said, well, now how about the job part? Now they're creating a program called NEPA Thrives, and they're working together across these boundaries to solve that problem. And again, the major employers have stepped up in a significant way. And other cities have now approached us about how did you do that? And we have a toolkit to give them about how to do that. My reason in bringing that up, and one of the things that we touched on briefly, lightly here, but I think is really important, particularly my role in the Fed, is to think regionally. The city doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists in a region. This region in particular is very challenged because of our geography. And Mayor Nutter knows as well. We've got 3 states with 3 different objectives often that don't coordinate well. And that hurts this city because if people in the region don't believe that Philadelphia and the success of Philadelphia is critically important to the success of the region, you can't get things done. I mean, we're having this fight right now with transit, right? Pure and simple here in terms of funding of transit in this region, because people don't have that belief. And so if you don't have that belief, then you just spin off and do your own thing and you don't coordinate. Why I brought up Northeast PA is because they're inspirational in how they think about working together to solve their problems and to build a better economy. The second thing I'll bring up, and so regionalism, while we've talked a lot about the role of the city, investing in the city, we can't lose sight of, we've got to also get the region to believe and the region to chip in. The second thing I'll say very briefly is the other thing that came up in this economic mobility conference when we had people talking about their frustrations to a large extent is these, and these mayors know it far better than I, you're only as successful as you can get your K-12 educational system to be successful. And that is a real frustration often in these cities. And I think personally, by the way, I doubled down on my Fed disclaimer. You can't say the Fed said, you can just say Pat said. There's no, that's the rule. We're entering an era of general purpose technology, AI, that is coming into the workforce in a major way and is going to upend a lot of traditional jobs. We need to give these students those skills, number one. Second, we need to bring back in this country the honor and dignity of the trades. Because while AI may get rid of the customer service rep, the call center rep, I'm from a family of steam fitters and pipe fitters. I'm the one that didn't follow the family trade. You still need a, ChatGPT is not going to fix your leak. So if we want the city and the nation's economy, we need those skills. And I don't think we honor those enough. We don't tell young people that's a pathway for your success. That's a pathway that's important to this country. And so I think while we're focused a lot on AI, we should also think about the K-12 education system. If people have the desire to want to go into the trades, we should build pathways, ladders to help them succeed in that. Those are the two things I think a lot about in terms of how we're going to move the needle forward economically.
Thank you, Pat. And with that, I would like you all to join me in thanking not just for their words of wisdom today, but more for all their work. And also, is it not amazing that over our years, we honored such an incredible group of people? Isn't it just my honor, our honor, that they are here with us today to help celebrate our 20th anniversary? Please join me in thanking our panelists.
More pictures, more pictures. Yeah. I got it. More phones.
Right. And then one for the big camera. Go. Gorgeous. Good luck.
Well, you've heard from the domestic mayors. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
I'll send it to you.
I think that's.
Oh. You know, this would not have been possible at all without the guidance that we received from Larry Nussdorf when we first started Penn IUR. He was one of our first board members and one of our closest and dearest advisors who gave us really important advice as to how to shape and form Penn IUR. We've heard now from domestic mayors, from people of the United States. We now have a group of awardees who we'd like to bring up to talk a little bit more about cities around the world. And so Yvonne Aki-Sawyerr is going to come when she stopped talking to Mark Morial, whom we've heard from, Enrique Peñalosa, whom we've heard from. Please come up and sit. Jaime Pumajero, former mayor of Barranquilla, currently now head of Breathe Cities, and Marisa Rodas, visiting scholar at Penn IUR and former mayor of Quito, Ecuador. And we have online, I believe, Sheila Patel, here she is, over here, coming to us, I believe from Japan, but really from India, and has been very, very important in the formation of and work of something called Slum Dwellers International, and the work of what happens for women, particularly in informal settlements. So all of these mayors and people who are not elected, like Sheila, but who are important civic people, have, I think, experienced the kinds of things we've heard from the domestic mayors, from the US mayors. And so we're not going to ask them to repeat those problems because we know that those are common issues that all mayors around the world suffer and deal with, but perhaps the dimensions with which you deal with it are much more severe. But what we would like you to think about and reflect on for our audience today is, what do you think the leading cities of the world need to be thinking about as you go forward? What are the pressing issues? And we'll start with Yvonne. Yvonne is on a very tight schedule, so she may have to leave us before the panel is over. But Yvonne, please.
I think it's just really important for us to understand the level of diversity that we have among cities, not just within cities. So as I answer this question, there is no homogeneous response to that question. And I'm going to speak from the context of my own city, which will mirror a number of cities, but not all. The climate crisis is actually something which is severely impacting the well-being of our residents, as well as the natural landscape and the built environment. There's no getting away from that. We're experiencing extreme heat. We're experiencing extreme weather events, flooding, which leads to landslides, mudslides. And as I mentioned earlier on, the growth of the population size at the sort of rate is also being affected because of the agricultural impact of climate change. So that's something that cannot be underestimated. And what's so difficult or challenging about this is that my city, like many others, is not a major contributor to the climate crisis. Africa as a whole contributes less than 4% of global greenhouse gas emissions, and yet is disproportionately impacted because the infrastructure base and the ability to bounce back after a landslide, after a flood, is very difficult. When someone loses their home and their livelihood, they are not insured. So that poverty level that they are reduced to is one that's very difficult to climb up from. And as city leaders, as others have said before, our job is to ensure that people's lives are improved. So if people are at the heart of what it is you're doing, then being able to build adaptation and resilience, and these aren't just big words, coming back to the point about acronyms and so on, these are real actions. So in our case, taking practical steps when you don't have land use planning, when you don't have building permits, is difficult, but there are things that you can do. And one of those things is to focus on ensuring that we're able to upgrade informal settlements, to focus on ensuring that you're able to improve sanitation, improve water access, improve heat reduction by, as you mentioned, Freetown, the tree town, in which we've planted 1.2 million trees, and we've now set ourselves a target of 5 million trees by 2028, creating jobs, thousands of jobs, green jobs, as we might want to call them. And again, it's not just terminology. You know, this is jobs in waste management. One of the very practical things that we did was to, for the first time ever, and this will sound bizarre, but it is true, we built a wastewater treatment plant. There wasn't one before I became mayor. But that wastewater treatment plant not only provides better, healthier disposal of waste, but we're now using the waste generated, liquid waste, to create briquettes. So instead of briquettes made from liquid waste, from the stuff that we flush, and that's a clean cooking alternative. 82% of cooking fuel in the city was wood or charcoal. So if you say to people, stop cutting down trees, but you provide no alternative, then you go nowhere. So being able to create those alternatives. So whether it's, you know, bringing in more drainage, whether it's improving the sanitation, we literally have just passed a new bylaw on sanitation, which brings in this private sector, but also ensures that every household is now serviced, whether it's creating new markets, building new markets, shade covers for market women who are working outdoors. There's a wide range of interventions, but every day for us as a city, our biggest challenge would be the impact of an issue that we are not contributing to, but which we're deeply, deeply affected by. And then, of course, the financing to make those interventions. Access to finance. Miami-Dade mayor, I was in Miami-Dade, not in Miami, Miami-Dade about 4 years ago. And I had an experience that I have very often. It's called mayor envy. When you sit in a room and your colleague mayor tells you that she has a budget of $14 billion, when you have a budget of $4 million for a population that's bigger than yours. And that's just the reality. That it's funny, but it's not funny. It's deeply serious, and it means that you're always having to think outside the box, always having to innovate, always having to look for ways to access those resources and build. And this goes so much further because a lot of that lack of resource stems from much deeper fundamental problems which can only be addressed within economic policies at the national level, which is why the move. But I will say in closing, because you're right, I have to go catch a flight now. I will say in closing that in the role of mayor, you cannot do it all because you're working within an economic landscape or ecosystem which national governments can really set a tone for. But there's a lot that you can do when the focus, as others have said, has been to, continues to be, to improve the lives of your residents. Planning, taking risks, innovating, and just being dogged about making change can make a big difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have to remember that some of the cities that we're talking about are functioning with what is called unitary government, which is that the central government controls the finances and the ability to have property taxes regulated, the ability to borrow doesn't exist. There's no municipal bond market to finance things. It all has to be done on your own. And so that is really, really makes things very, very difficult and different.
Jeannie, can I just say something? Because I'm not sure either of us have said it. So I'm in the opposition party, the opposition to the ruling government. So that's another sort of level. So when we introduced the property rate, the digitized system in 2020, the central government actually put out a notice on radio and television telling the entire city not to pay taxes. So we went for a year with no taxes, but now we're back on.
And you had to get permission to have a building code from the national. They do not have a building code because the national government has not allowed it. So just imagine trying to operate a city like that. And Mauricio Rodas, you were also in the opposition party when you were mayor of Quito. Would you like to tell us a little bit about the kinds of things that are happening or did happen with you?
Thank you so much. Well, first of all, I would like to congratulate Peñalosa for its 20th anniversary, 20 years of doing fantastic work. And I am extremely thankful not only for the award that I received back in 2019, but also because Peñalosa has hosted me as a visiting scholar for some years now. I've been delighted to co-teach a course with Jeannie precisely on cities' climate resilient infrastructure financing. So I absolutely in agreement with Yvonne. I think access to finance is definitely one of the biggest challenges cities worldwide, both in the global north and particularly in the global south, are suffering from. And this comes from a reality, which is the fact that cities are confronting a country-focused global financial architecture. The core international financial system was designed back in the 1940s under Bretton Woods, when the world was not nearly as urbanized as it is today. Now, more than half of the world's population live in cities. It is in cities where 80% of GDP globally is being produced, but also cities are the places where we are confronting some of the global most challenging issues like poverty, inequality, and of course, climate change. Cities are responsible for more than 70% of CO2 emissions. And yet, cities are having a very difficult time trying to navigate this nation-centric financial system to access the necessary resources to become drivers in the battle against climate change. And probably national governments don't realize that without an effective role from cities, it will be impossible for them to meet their NDCs, to meet the Paris Agreement goals. Cities would be needing approximately $4.3 trillion from now until 2030 to turn their infrastructure into a climate resilient one. It is impossible for cities to access that amount of money under the status quo. That is why it is so urgent to promote reforms to the international financial system, to develop new direct financial facilities for cities. Because the problem we have now is that, to start with, only 44% of countries in the world allow cities to borrow. And in many of those countries, including my own, Ecuador, cities need a national government's guarantee to access finance. A national government's guarantee that very frequently is not granted because of political rivalries between the national and the local government, something that I personally suffer from. So, this is the kind of issues that cities are facing worldwide. And that is why we need to rethink the way money is allocated. We need to rethink, for example, the way multilateral development banks work, because they are controlled by national governments. The guys sitting at their boards are national governments, ministers of finance, who don't have any kind of incentive to change the rules of the game. That's why we need to come up with a different kind of institutional frameworks to support cities financially. And part of the work that Ginny and I have been doing has to do with precisely thinking about these reforms. Peñalosa hosts the secretariat of the SDSN Global Commission for Urban SDG Finance. Jaime is part of that commission. And one of the projects in which the commission is working now is the creation of a Green Cities Guarantees Fund to develop an alternative guarantee mechanism for cities to the highly politicized sovereign guarantee one. And we think that through developing this kind of new innovative mechanisms, we can help cities to access timely and affordable borrowing, which in my view is absolutely urgent if we want to have cities becoming absolute drivers, as they must be, in the battle against climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you should know that, Mauricio built the first metro in Ecuador. He was able to find the finance to do that, which was really quite incredible given what the situation was. Let's turn now to Sheila Patel. Sheila, coming to us from Zoom, and the work that you've been doing for many generations, many decades, in empowering women, empowering people in the informal settlements. Tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you, Ginny, and congratulations for this amazing event. You can see how committed I am to it. It's 1 o'clock in the morning in Japan, and I'm sitting here very, very interested in this conversation. So my work represents the challenges that cities face from below and besides, when 15 to 65% of city dwellers live illegally, informally, and almost invisibly despite this volume, because our planning systems, as Yvonne mentioned in another context, does not acknowledge their presence, does not plan for them, and gets everybody in the government and in the municipality shocked when you actually talk about the numbers that often live without water, sanitation, and the right to the city. I think this is now exacerbated both by the fact that the Sustainable Development Goal outcomes have been dismal, and in cities they have been terrible. And now we have the challenge of climate change, which is not only bringing extreme weather that these townships and the habitat in which they live cannot protect people from. In most of the cities in the global south right now, there is unbelievable increase in heat. In summer, almost 10, 12 degrees higher. And Mauricio and many of you have worked so hard to campaign and successfully get acknowledged the reality of what extreme weather and extreme heat is doing to all the planet. But what is also happening is that change is going to lead to more and more people coming into urban areas as climate refugees. And so we have this double jeopardy where we don't know what to do with people who already live there. And this is going to double in the next 15 to 20 years. And therefore, a lot of the work that we do attempts to create a sense of citizenship amongst communities, to feel that they have to produce new knowledge, new partnerships, new alliances that make development investment climate proof. This is very difficult in a world where most of our leaders are still finding that they want to deny the challenges of climate, despite whatever may be the public rhetoric. And that institutional arrangements, scientific discoveries are not getting democratized to work for everybody. So for me, the real challenge lies in how cities are viewed not just as producers of capital, but also the reality that they are going to be the refuge for lots and lots of people who cannot survive in the countryside due to even more complex problems like weather, extreme heat, cyclones, and rains. So I think that the whole way in which cities are planned, cities are invested in, it all has to change in a very dramatic way. We are really not equipped. Most of the politicians that I know are not like these amazing mayors that I'm listening to. Most of them are in denial. More and more businesses, including global institutions and private sector giants, are turning their backs on the reality of climate change. And resources to address this, what Maurizio was saying right now, is really the crunch of the matter, that as it is, cities don't have enough money. But now the kind of technology, the kind of transitions that are needed to make cities survive the onslaught of more and more people coming because of their inability to survive where they were, is producing challenges that we have never looked at. And therefore, how do we develop protocols, practices, investments that allow communities, even the poorest communities, to participate in the transition and change? How do we produce new planning cultures that allow for minimal equity in access to basic services? Sounds so simple, but it's one of the hardest things for cities to do. And we're looking at ways by which social movements of these communities can be seen as critical partners to the mayors. And our colleagues in Sierra Leone and in many parts of Africa and Asia have done amazing things when mayors reach out and seek partnerships and support communities to engage in things that work for them. And I feel that the role of universities, centers like yours, Ginny, the work that all of you do, has to bring new academic practices that transform this 18th century, 19th century imageries of cities and how they should be run and why, what constitutes a good city. So I think it's important for more and more people from different walks of life to work together. When I started my career, I used to hate the mayor and the city administration. Now they're some of my best friends because we know that if we don't work together, we can't solve these problems. So congratulations for all of you who have got the award this year and for this 20th anniversary. And I look forward to continuing my engagement with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. What does make a good city? And I hope you notice her screensaver behind her. One of the things that she's been working very hard on is dealing with what kind of materials could be used for the informal settlements to resist the heat that they're experiencing now, because we've got tin roofs and cardboard and so forth. You can imagine when you have 38, 40-degree heat, what that means in living those places. Jaime, your turn. Tell us a little bit about what you'd like to share with us.
Thanks, Jeannie. And again, you and Susan, wonderful event. And it's nice to be here with all these former mayors and steal a few of their ideas. I think they're definitely going to help. I was thinking what I could say from having been a minister of housing, but also a mayor in Barranquilla, like what is an overarching theme today? And I go back to a conversation I was having a few days ago, and I think it's something that's happening. It's a shift in the world. A couple of decades ago, we were used to, or this generation got used to a different type of normalcy. Before, you did not have sort of like a legitimate and truthful media platform. Before the 30s, 40s, 50s, where mainstream television came on and had a few rules in most countries, you had a lot of, for example, newspaper outlets, and each of them represented an idea, a position. Politically or financially, they represented something that they wanted. But when radio came on, and then television came on, it sort of ordered things a bit, and it gave rise to the idea that journalism had to be nonpartisan, that it had to represent truthfulness, that it had to be not equitable, because you don't have to be equitable when somebody's wrong. You have to be truthful and you have to be just. But these things have begun to melt down because of social media. And they're exacerbated by something that was said in the panel earlier, which is the inability for our children to comprehend the conversation more than the 30 seconds that they get on TikTok or Twitter or whatever. And why is that happening? And we started to go back to a study we did with the World Bank in Barranquilla. In the region, in Latin America, 2 out of 10 kids that are in second grade read to their level. 2 out of 10 kids. That means 8 kids are not learning to read in second grade, and that means that they will have a crutch for the rest of their life, because they will not be able to understand when they're reading about physics or literature or any logical thing. So why are kids looking at the 30-second screen? Because they can't comprehend the 5-page explanation on a thesis or on a position or on why climate change is real and unrefutable. These are the discussions we're having a regression on because of this. So we said, what can we do? And we started working with the IDB, and we developed a very simple and cost-effective solution. We spend about $1 million a year on it. And now kids in Barranquilla, 7 out of 10 read to their level. And the other 3 have a very specific reading comprehension program.
What did you do with the International Development Bank and the $1 million?
We created a program that helps our teachers pinpoint what's going on with these students, who are doing well, who are doing poorly, who needs help, how can they work off a buddy system. And also we give them reading material, and we teach our professors and our teachers, because sometimes they just need a little bit of encouragement, and we started measuring it. And then this started working, and then we said, what else? And we learned from one teacher, one principal in one high school in Colombia, in Barranquilla, that out of her own volition, I don't even know if that's a word in English, but out of her own idea or initiative, she created the first bilingual public school in Colombia. She did it. What she did was she transferred out all the math teachers, physics teacher, everything else, and she brought in all language teachers. And she said, I'll teach the math, but they're going to teach it in English. And then she started this, and the other said, well, we can do it. So we brought in the British Council, and we're paying the British Council to make all of our schools bilingual. And that opens up a ton of opportunities for new kids. And that's where I'm going next, is what else is not working? We're living in a world where a lot of people are increasing their quality of life and their income. That's happening in developing countries as well. But some people are feeling left out. So that's creating a chasm between the people that are feeling that things are going well and the ones that feel that they're being left out. And this is happening in the US, but it's happening everywhere. So how do you prevent that? You prevent it also by giving these people the opportunity to feel that they have a path, that they have something to look forward to, that they are not being left out and they are part of the conversation. And that's why we have to understand and empathize a bit and not just think, oh, this is not what I represent or what I want. No, you have to sit down and you have to think that even the best policies have negative consequences. And a lot of where the world is going is having a negative consequence on some people. So how do you build equality? You give them a path. And that's what we've tried to do with, for example, making sure that no matter where you were born in Barranquilla, you can learn English at school, you can learn how to read, and then you can have a pathway then to hopefully a better job and a better future. And that is what I think is troubling the world, because in the end, people are feeling that they are divided. And it's just not just happening here, it's happening everywhere. And if we can find ways to give people purpose and sense and a plan, then I think we're going forward. And I just want to end with this, Jeannie. Last year, I was invited by the Pope for 20 people, 20 leaders, and 20 kids from around the world into an idea that he had, which is to create the University of Meaning, La Universidad del Sentido, which meant we're teaching everybody physics and geometry and math and urban development, but sometimes we're forgetting to give the meaning, purpose, and a sense of, I would say, direction. And what he was trying to do was develop an idea of how can we complement the universities and the schools with somebody that teaches something that teaches kids emotional intelligence, the ability to empathize, the ability to listen, and hopefully the ability to have so much inner resilience that no matter what happens to you, you know where you're going. So, yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And we might teach our children a little Spanish, which would be very good too. And Enrique, your last word for us.
Thank you, Jeannie. You say one great challenge for urban challenge in our time. It's very different according to the level of development of the city, and there are many challenges such as education or informal settlement improvement or new housing. I will talk about something that sounds a little frivolous, but I think it's extremely crucial, and it's leisure time, how to make cities fun. And I think this is not a minor issue. As you will see, for example, if we think that we are competing for people now, the great competition is not as the source of wealth is not land or capital so much as people who are so good at what they do that they can choose where to live. But there is another parallel tendency, which is households are getting much smaller, and more people, as people used to be with the family in the past, now people live by themselves in very small homes. So this is, and also I will add one last thing, which is equity. When inequality is most felt is during leisure time, because it's not when people are sleeping, and it's not when people even are at work, because maybe the lowest employee or the CEO, they go to work and they have some problem, they meet friends, they have some good times. But when the huge difference is felt, when they go into their leisure time, where the upper income people goes to a large home and has access to restaurants, to vacations, to country clubs, to country houses, and the low-income person goes to a very small home, and he or she and her children, the only alternative they have to their phone is public space. And so public pedestrian space is extremely important. And I will say something maybe sound a little in contrary to what has been said here. I think there is a lot of false environmentalists now at this time, which I think is very classist in many ways, because of course it's the global warming is important and all that, but is, for example, in Colombia, only 3 out of 1,000 square kilometers, 3,000 of the area of the country is taken up by urban areas. So it's nothing, it's a microscopic part. In this microscopic part, we should worry about how to make people happy. And I will just end with one example. I was once invited to Columbia University because they were going, some urban professor, urban studies professor had taken a group to Bogotá, low income, and they went and they saw the water, some creeks that go to the river, and so they said what is cool now to say in the world, which is that the waterfronts should we have a lot of bushes and nature and all of this. So in other words, to make them impossible to visit for everybody. That same day, I had been in the Hudson River waterfront, where there were hundreds of the beautiful sunny day, hundreds of thousands of people had been there enjoying the waterfront, people on wheelchairs, baby strollers, jogging. But this now is sinful, because this is environmentally bad for the environment, to put cement next to the water, you know? And so, I think, and there are many other examples, you know, in Bogotá, for example, we were going to do a mountain path. Bogotá is lined by a mountain, and we're going to do a mountain path. But so this is very terrible for the environment, because we are going to have a path for people. And so I think leisure time is crucial. Leisure spaces to invest in parks facilities, and also there is many times there is this conflict. There is this conflict because there is this false environmentalist that is blocking the way we make cities better for human beings. There is this little animal we have forgotten about, which takes us a microscopic part of Earth, which is human beings. And I think that in cities in particular, we should give priority to human happiness and not a lot of these extreme and false environmentalists, which are only, in my opinion, are very classist, because many of these people who propose this impossible to use waterfronts, they are members of country clubs, they have country houses, they go to abroad, and so they couldn't care less what happens with the low-income people and their leisure time.
Okay, well, thank you. This has been quite a morning of these wonderful leaders with lots of ideas, lots of wisdom, ranging from how are you going to reform the international financial system to let's make people happy. At any rate, thank you very much for coming. Thank you. Pleasure to have our leaders here. Congratulations. So thank you very much for celebrating our 20th anniversary with you, and we hope to see you in 20 more years.